Welcome to the first Centre Court MBA Festival of 2022. Of course, these are our regular sessions where I have the chance to co-host with the Poets and Quants Editor-in-Chief John Byrne, and we sit down with the world's leading business schools. And over the next 2 days of this first festival of the year, we hope to deliver on that wonderful promise. We have a wide range of panels. As we look at the focus for February is really thinking about schools and the right fit. Inevitably, with so many gatekeepers that are involved, they will be providing lots of insights and advice about how you can be the best you in the applications that you submit to these very selective top schools. And also through the next 2 days, we've been very fortunate to sit down with many of the deans and MBA program directors of these top schools to get their perspectives and insights on the schools, what really makes them stand out. And it's been wonderful to connect with them, just the passion, the energy, the enthusiasm that they have, not just for their schools, but the sort of transformational leadership journeys that they witness all of their students going through. So here we are with the first panel. Nothing has been said, so everything that the panelists bring to day one is fresh. And it's my pleasure to welcome Anna Faris. Anna is the head of recruitment and admissions and careers at IMD in Lausanne, with that beautiful blue sky behind it. Anna, it's lovely to see you again.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very, very happy to be here today.
Also joined with blue skies from Montreal and Tatiana Deveau. Tatiana is the recruitment administrator of the master's programs at the Des Hotels School at McGill, who says that all of that tough weather on the East Coast has avoided Montreal. So you haven't had to use those underground corridors, Tatiana, and students have been up above ground.
We've been enjoying quite a mild winter here in Montreal.
Brandon Kirby's been busy because, of course, Rotterdam is one of those top international schools with a January class start, and the chance, Brandon, to welcome all of that talent that you had been communicating with over the previous year and finally see them arrive on the campus. Brandon is the Director of Marketing and Admissions at the Rotterdam School of Management and the Erasmus University. It must be a lovely moment, Brandon, to then see everybody arriving on the campus.
Indeed, and I think especially with what we've all sort of experienced over the past few years, to actually be able to do it and see them in person, I think is something else. It's been you don't know what you got until it's gone, right? And so I think it's nice to be able to welcome them back onto a campus. So yeah, exciting times for sure.
Yes, and then from the heat and humidity of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, it's lovely to have Emily Elizabeth Price. Emily is the Senior Director of Admissions at the Asia School of Business, this fascinating and very dynamic program in collaboration with the MIT Sloan. And Emily, lovely to have you with us, and perhaps we'll start with you and this very distinct program that now has, sort of 6-7 years of wonderful students coming through looking for that pioneer adventure in Southeast Asia. With all of the panelists, I'd love to just get a sort of a general introduction to the school, perhaps even how its location, really makes a difference, in your case in Southeast Asia. So tell us a little bit about the program, its course length, and why people should be so excited to join you.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Really happy to be here today and to talk about our pretty unique program. So we're a relatively new business school. I think certainly the newest on the panel today. We started out of a unique kind of partnership agreement between MIT Sloan School of Management and the Central Bank of Malaysia, Bank Negara. We launched our first MBA intake in 2016. So we've had 6 intakes under our belt at this point. We've subsequently launched a part-time working professionals program and a specialized master's degree in central banking. But our full-time program is certainly our flagship program. We bring students from all over the world. The intake size is usually anywhere between 40 and 50 students, so still relatively small. And it is designed as a 20-month or 2-year program. We've recently created an option for students to graduate in 16 months. The program is based in the heart of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, but we do, I'd say, kind of one of our, kind of key features of the program is that we do have students working on an experiential learning project every semester that could be based in a different country around Southeast Asia. The students do go to MIT for a month as part of the program, and they just got back from a week-long industry trek in Dubai. So excited to get to be doing some travel again. And those are, yeah, I'd say that's kind of a high level introduction, and excited to share more throughout the rest of the evening.
Yeah, there must have been a sudden flurry of activity on LinkedIn when they were all on the Sloan campus recently, and lots of group photographs. Here we all are. As Brandon said earlier, it's lovely to actually have students on campus and that sort of energy that brings. Anna, I mean, IMD, of course, well established, but it itself continues to grow. You've expanded the class size. You're up to what, over 105 students. So perhaps just for the viewers, giving a sense of the culture, the sort of the values of the school.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to apologize if you hear my dog barking in the background. He's today being a bit naughty. Apologies for that. But yes, IMD is located in Switzerland, in Lausanne. Switzerland is in the middle of Europe, so it's very convenient to reach every single country in Europe. It's a one-year program. We actually are celebrating this year our 50th anniversary for the MBA. The school celebrated the 75th anniversary last year. So, we're on celebration mode. I'm very excited. And yes, we're increasing the class size. We've had a class of 90 students, so quite a small cohort for many, many years. But a couple of years ago, we started increasing the class size little by little. We're never going to be a huge program. I think the maximum that we would want to have is 150 more or less students in the class. But yes, we're increasing the class size. It's a program that starts in January and runs until December every year. And it's what I like to call probably the longest leadership development program out there. Our school is based or started as an executive education kind of institution where we develop really leadership skills for the executives that come on campus. And the MBA become kind of an extension of those programs, adding the MBA toolkit that you would get into in any other MBA. But I think the main focus for us really is the leadership development.
Right, it's quite a leadership journey and intensive. We'll be talking more about some of the components, even the sort of accompaniment and therapy that you provide on that leadership journey. Rotterdam has been in the news with Jeff Bezos and his big boat, and whether or not it will fit under the one of the bridges in Rotterdam. It was a reminder to me, Brandon, of Rotterdam is one of Europe's biggest ports. It's this incredible hub for so much activity, and I guess RSM is at the heart of that. How does that location really shape a school that defines itself as being this positive force for change?
Yeah, it does. Ironically, I was out walking yesterday in the city and walked, I wouldn't say past, but I could actually see the bridge. And I think it goes to show people were planning on lining the waterway and throwing eggs at the yacht, should it actually, so this goes to show, I think, in general, what the approach of not just the Dutch, but people who are living here, the way we sort of approach sustainability and renewables and things like that. As you mentioned, it is the largest port in Europe. So a lot of companies are based around here because of that, to keep an eye on the goods that are coming and going into Europe. We do have a lot of relationships with, for example, the Port of Rotterdam, and you see that not only in our MBA program, but our other programs as well. Yeah, we changed our mission statement a few years back to be a force for positive change, which was sort of us planting a flag in the ground to say that business is a force for good. Business, it can be about personal gain, but it can also be about raising the water around you. And I think that we've really seen that come through over the past few years. Our program starts in January as well. It's a one-year program. Class size is anywhere from 115 to 125 or 30. It just depends on who we have coming through the application journey every year. So you have the benefit of having, a large enough class from a networking perspective and being able to see different nationalities. We're one of the most diverse cohorts in the world, 99% international. And then I think just within the setting of the Netherlands itself, a lot of people don't realize that the Dutch are actually the best non-native English speakers in the world. I think they beat the Swedes this year, so it always kind of goes back and forth between Sweden. But around 94% of the population speaks English at a fluent level. So it also means that when you're looking for job prospects afterwards, there's ample opportunity to be able to stay in the Netherlands if that's something that you're looking to do, which a lot of our students are looking to stay in Europe after graduation.
Right, so you've got the tallest and the strongest in English language skills, presumably provided that they bought those eggs from either Whole Foods or directly from the Amazon site, then Jeff Bezos won't mind. It's all contributing to the bottom line.
As long as they're right.
Canada has been a top destination. Right. Canada has been such a popular destination for business studies, and Montreal, this wonderful sort of bilingual mix. Brandon was talking about language skills. I guess that's part of the experience that students are then enjoying, Tatiana, at Des Hotels in McGill.
It is, Montreal is well known as a multicultural, multilingual city. It really does have an international feel. We are also a port city, and there's lots to do and see in Montreal. McGill is really at the heart of it, and our Des Hotels faculty is really very centrally located as well. Our class size is between 65 and 85 students, and our first class actually did graduate in 1963, so maybe we're not as youthful, but we have been redesigned in 2019 to incorporate themes of sustainability throughout all of our subjects. So it's not just a course that's offered on sustainability, it really is woven into all of the core subjects, and it's a real focus for our students so that going forward, once they graduate, that they have sustainability top of mind as a topic, and it's not just profitability as the sole important piece or factor. We have lots of different flexible options. Our program is delivered in either 12, 16, or 20-month lengths, and the difference really comes down to the experiential learning that students wish to incorporate in their learning. So there's not only specializations, we have 5 of them that they can choose from, but there's different experiential learning opportunities that they can choose from. Among them is an international trip with the cohort that is going on this year. We're very excited that they are in the planning stages for that. There's a practicum, exchange, and internship. And as you mentioned, Canada is really a destination that in part is due to the post-graduation work permit that is offered at the current time through our government for students, depending on the length of their study, to stay up to 3 years after graduation for their work.
Right. I guess great for them to know how they can then consolidate that learning experience and sort of stay for the next steps of their professional career. Well, I mean, we've talked about course lengths of 12 months, 16, 20 months. In any of those scenarios, you're packing in probably more things than they could possibly find the time to do. Emily, in now year 7, I mentioned the pioneer spirit, but it's actually a frontier mindset that I think you and Sean often refer to. How does that then reflect in the individuals that come into the ASB program in terms of their backgrounds, that wonderful eclectic mix of diversity that you achieve?
Yeah, it definitely is an eclectic mix. We do have students coming from all over the world, but I think the common denominator is definitely a mindset. It's not that everybody has necessarily worked in emerging markets, though certainly we do attract a lot of students from emerging markets, but there is an appetite to learn from the business environment that exists, that's kind of on the ground in Southeast Asia, or that kind of appetite for a little bit of an unconventional MBA experience where you are going to be thrust into these, projects, with stakeholders, with industries, with functions that are probably going to be pretty out of your comfort zone, in markets where, maybe English most likely isn't the primary language, right? And then you're still going to have to sort of figure it out amongst a group of really similarly diverse classmates. So I think that appetite to kind of do something very dynamic and hands-on in an environment that is probably, very out of your comfort zone is kind of a mindset that a lot of our students do come in with. And I think, that sort of appetite serves them really well throughout the program and beyond, because I think the richness of the learning experience is quite unique in this kind of environment.
Right. Anna, you sort of emphasize, we're not this program of 600, 900 or 1,000 students, it's 105. And yet in every class profile, it's 105 very unique and distinct stories. Talk us through, I guess, the most recent arrivals coming in, even more voices coming in from the African continent. Who has just joined IMD this year?
A wonderful group of people, I must say. Yes, we welcome 105 MBAs in January, and they come also from all over the world. As the same as RSM, 99% of our students are international. Some of them live in Switzerland, but we only have, I think, this year 2 Swiss MBAs, so quite reduced. And yeah, this year we've seen massive increase of applications from Africa. Last year we did, and so 11% of the class comes from Africa and the Middle East this year. It's quite diverse, actually, the places where our applicants come from. As I said, from all over the world, all different industries. I think for us, diversity, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree here, diversity is such an important component. Being able to bring that unique experience to the classroom and being able to share those experiences and that knowledge that nobody else in the classroom will bring. It can be, from the geography that you're based on, the kind of industries that you've been working on, even the educational background that you've had, the different countries that you've lived in. So that's the kind of things that we're looking for. And in terms of mindset, following on what Emily was saying, I think what we look for is people who are really interested in understanding themselves. And that's kind of going back to what I was talking about, the leadership development. In order to be a good leader, you have to be very self-aware. And I think one of the characteristics that is common among all of our MBAs is that sense of, they want to understand themselves a bit better. What makes them tick? What drives them? Why they react the way they react? So that they can improve themselves and become better leaders in the future and have a bigger impact in their organizations and in the society as well.
Right. In terms of that self-awareness, Brandon, I mean, your RSM is ranked among the top schools for its the quality of its research output, and yet it's bringing together all of these diverse voices, the sort of backgrounds that Anna was describing. It's that connection in the classroom that really then holds up a mirror, perhaps, to your way of thinking, new ways of thinking, new ways of approaching situations, and such a strong personal learning journey.
Yeah, I think using scientifically backed research as sort of a basis for how we approach a lot of our leadership development. So for us, it's called PLD, the Personal Leadership Development journey, if you will, because it starts from the very first moment you start the program all the way through to the end. And I think for a lot of students who then become alums and they reflect back, it is a critical part of the journey, because the academics, all of our institutions are going to give you great academics. But it's the approach that each one of us take that can be slightly different on how we train and how we develop the individual. And so I think that also helps make the journey more personal. So whether that's through coaching, group coaching, and career coaching, or reflection, or different things that we do throughout the program. And I think oftentimes we forget how intense the programs themselves are, especially when you're doing it in a year. It's condensed. So you're really being thrown into things that even the most experienced person who feels they have the broadest shoulders can handle anything. When you throw into the mix that for a lot of our students, they're not in their home country, they're not surrounded by friends and family. It's sort of this social experiment in a way that you're putting 100+ people in a room with all kinds of stress and anxiety and wanting to succeed and what's going to happen afterwards. It's all of those sort of pressures combined with the sort of the safety net or the bubble wrapping around that of what we've learned over the years through educating leaders. And that is where the research comes in, but also understanding how to get the best out of each individual. And I think that that's one thing that we really excel at and that we see year over year with the students who are coming out of the program. So I think that that's one of the main ways that we're able to marry sort of the science-based side of things, but also bring in the more humanistic approach to how we bring leadership development to our students.
With this emphasis on finding the right fit, because you're going to do an MBA once, let's make sure you're in the right place for it. Tatiana, lots of great business schools in Canada. Do you feel that there is some sort of magic dust at des Hotels, something that really resonates with the students that you attract versus other schools, whether they're in nearby Toronto or over on the West Coast in Vancouver?
Yeah, well, I think that finding the right fit is so very important, and it's really it comes down to knowing yourself at the moment that you're applying to an MBA. Of course, through your journey, you're going to evolve and change and grow as an individual. I think that at McGill, really what differentiates perhaps our school over other Canadian schools would be that the class size does generate those opportunities more for our students because it is a small cohort. They will get to lean on one another. Like Brandon said, you know, you learn a lot from the group, and you do have really many individuals in the space, but you are learning from everybody's experience, where they came from before, and all of the different diverse pieces of their background, not only the geography, but you know, their work experience and their studies. I think also that students who are seeking to do an MBA at McGill are looking for an opportunity to be with, you know, a diverse cohort, which is something, of course, that we are, you know, always looking to build a really good diverse cohort to have those experiences. But having the feeling of in the classroom, a sense of belonging, where they can develop those empathetic leadership skills and really find their own personal leadership style and be comfortable with it before they go out and find that new career. It's not just to get them through the MBA that they're learning, but it's something that we want them to be using these skills 5, 10, 15 years down the line from what they've learned in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, you're 4 of the world's top schools, therefore, you know, highly selective, and yet I feel that you offer this gift to applicants. You know, all of you have talked about this opportunity for self-reflection. You know, maybe you've been working for 4, 6, 8 years, and here is this opportunity to hold up a mirror, think about background choices that you've made. Now, how does that feed through, Emily, to your application? You know, we talked about individuals, they don't necessarily have to have set foot in Southeast Asia, but are there certain components that you're looking to identify that say, that resonates with the sort of personalities and characteristics that we know really work well at ASB?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, some of the things that really come out through the application and the evaluation process that stand out to us is, yes, this person is going to, you know, be successful here. They're going to, they are going to transform here. You know, we're looking for sort of evidence of, again, people don't have to have it all figured out. They don't need to know exactly what they're going to do post MBA, but there needs to be a sort of set of principles and values that are kind of driving their decision-making process. And I think that does get reflected in the application. And then, I think some of the nuanced things, right? People that are willing to take some risks, coming to a new business school, there has to be, again, that kind of appetite to do something a little bit different, but also be really take a lot of ownership over, they're going to be culture builders. They're going to be institution builders. What kind of leader are they going to play in actually establishing and creating, what we're trying to build as a legacy for the school. So I think that sort of, evidence of some risk taking and some flexibility and agility, those are all really, I think, important features. And I think to a certain extent, some cross-cultural savvy. So it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have worked outside of your home country, but there has to be, some evidence that they're going to be able to kind of collaborate in our type of environment. And I think those sort of characteristics do certainly shine through the application process that we've kind of built for ASB.
Perhaps some of our savvy and agile viewers, they're thinking, okay, so Anna is the head of admissions at IMD. Clearly she loves dogs. So when I apply to IMD, I need to talk about my great enthusiasm for our four-legged friends. Well, let me know, Anna, if in the next few months you see lots of dog lovers applying to the program. Now, you've embedded this assessment day. Talk a little bit about that and how that helps on both sides, this sort of dialogue that you establish, candidates getting to know you better and you getting to know the candidates better.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point of our assessment day. We have a quite unique admissions process. After the application has been submitted and has been reviewed by the admissions committee, we will review the application and we will decide whether we want to invite the candidate to this assessment day, which is a much longer kind of process than just having a one-to-one interview. We do have a one-to-one interview as well in this assessment process, assessment day, but we also have a number of different exercises. Some of them are going to be group exercises, some of them are going to be individual exercises. And we're going to spend now via Zoom is about 5 hours together with the MBA, with the candidates, and in person. We're going to start to do them again in person in March. So I'm very excited about that. It's a full day that we spend with the MBA. So we spent a lot of our resources to really get to know the candidates really, really well. And we want to see, how they behave in a group environment. When do they take the lead? When do they take a step back? Sometimes being a leader means to also taking a step back. How do they communicate with each other? What Emily was saying about cross-cultural awareness, I think is super important. We have groups of people from all over the world. And so being able to understand the nuances of the language when somebody's language, English is not their native speak language, is very important. So we want to see the drive, the understanding that they have about their own personality and the kind of things that they would like to improve. And when you spend a number of hours with them, that mask that they put at the beginning kind of goes away because they forget that you're there, and you see very interesting behaviors, not bad behaviors necessarily. Sometimes they are bad, but not always. But you really get to know them very, very well, and so we have kind of a glimpse on how they behave in the real world, and it's very, very interesting. And even though it takes a lot of our time and a lot of our resources, it's something that we will continue to do even, as we're growing the class.
I can imagine from having sort of learned about the individual on paper or on the screen to then have that sort of 5-hour interaction with them must be so revealing for the good and the better, occasionally the bad. But Brandon, you had put together a great series on probably on RSM's YouTube channel that talks people through the application process. Now, presumably, as you thought about, okay, what do I want to share? What's important? What sort of emerged in your thinking? And I do encourage the viewers to watch the series that you put together of just advice on presenting your best self, perhaps even avoiding some of the common mistakes that can occur.
Yeah, I won't go into the, make sure you get the business school's name correct and everything like that. I'll spare the viewers and the panelists talking about that. Those are the clear no-brainers. I think oftentimes there's a rush to, and sometimes this is due because of timing. Maybe you decide late in a cycle that you'd like to attend a program, and so there is a time element of things. But in a perfect situation, you give yourself the opportunity, and you've heard us use the word a couple of times from some of my colleagues on the panel about reflection, and to really reflect about who you are as an individual up to that point in time of the application, as well as to, I guess, reflect on who you would like to be after the program. And the more time you spend thinking about those things, besides the mechanical stuff of putting in, what your job history is and your CV and things of that nature, but when you start really getting into essay questions and when you start getting into interview responses, you really need to spend some time exploring and thinking and doing so. All those first level ideas, as I call them, in the creative space, a lot of times you get a lot of great ideas in the beginning and they're not the ones you end up going with, right? Because you keep thinking about it and you go, oh, that's cool. And then the finished product is related to where you started, but much more richer and in a much better spot. Same thing with an application. So if you think about what are the things I want to highlight and why? Yes, oftentimes we're the ones asking you questions during the admissions process, but you have the ability to answer that question in any which way you would like. And while I would never recommend not answering the question you were asked, how you respond to that question is completely up to you. And so this is when thinking about, okay, I really want to make sure that they understand I'm a super creative person and why that matters in a business context. So I'm going to wait for questions that allow me to present that side of myself. Same thing with an essay question, especially if you have an essay question that gives you a little bit more creative license to respond to that question. Your essays are read. I think that's a common question. Like, does someone read my essay? Yes, someone reads your essay question, I promise you. That's when, if you don't have the opportunity to go to an assessment day like IMD has, this is your opportunity to show someone who will only see you maybe as a piece of paper or as an applicant, the side that you want them to see. So the longer you take, I would say, think about it longer than you actually do filling it in, if that makes sense. So think about it for a week, ask your friends, ask your family to reflect on you as well, to sort of get those blind spots that are out there, not just strengths and weaknesses, but hey, you know, what's one thing that I've really been successful at, or, you know, whatever that might be. And then sit back, let it all sink in, and then start to write it. And then the final point would be, if English is your second language, it makes writing it easier because you've been thinking about it a lot, maybe in your head, in your own native tongue. So when it comes time to writing, you're not thinking like, oh, what's that? It's sort of like a story that you've been thinking about. It's much easier to tell a story you know versus making one up on the spot. So those are just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's a good reminder of what a people-driven process this is, and you know, the individuals reading these applications, it's not just a series of data points to check off. As viewers have perhaps followed Tatiana, schools and their sort of GMAT and GRE optional policies, or I mean, you're bringing them together in a classroom with professors like Henry Mintzberg, Carl Moore, you know, breaking down those silos of accounting and leadership and how everything fuses together. So how have you positioned standardized tests as, you know, one element, but in a bigger picture that you're really trying to understand the individual behind that?
Well, similar to what Brandon said, you know, it's every application has several pieces, several components. So it's all pieces of a puzzle. The standardized tests are only one piece of the puzzle, and they're a fairly static piece. It's a flash, you know, a flashpoint or a snapshot of your learning and one day of test taking, if you will. It's a few hours of your life. Whereas then your transcript will give a more broad view over time of your learning and those abilities. Then, you know, there are, like we were discussing before, the essay questions, which will give a little bit more insight into the person you are. And that's really the opportunity to make sure that, like Brendan said, and Anna before, you know, that people get to know you as a person and see things that are not detailed in any other aspect of your application. So the standardized tests, while they are important, they are not the be all end all of an application for our school. We do, of course, consider the scores, and it is an exclusive cohort. So there is an average score that we have posted, but there's no minimum for us to apply. Really, it is a holistic approach. And I know that everybody uses that term rather loosely, and it's probably a really difficult term for a lot of applicants to hear constantly and consistently. But it is true that, you know, all aspects are looked at from on an application. It's not simply one piece that is going to hold more weight than another and tip the scale. If there's a piece that is a little lower or a little higher for one applicant, it can differ greatly for the next applicant. So it's really important that each piece is considered carefully. Of course, you know, your scores are something that you're putting a lot of time into the preparation and the study and then the test writing. So yes, everybody would like to do well. However, there are other pieces that are of equal importance. I like to think of the admissions process or the application process like a puzzle. So each piece has its place. Each piece will indicate something different about the applicant, whether it's your CV that's going to tell us a little bit more about your work experience, or those letters of reference that are being written on your behalf. Those are giving us your work view, and then we're looking also at who you are through what you tell us in the essay questions, and then of course those snapshots from your testing and then your educational piece. So all together, it should give us that holistic view of what every applicant is bringing to the program.
Right. So, and any viewer who's taken a test and think, well, you know, they talk themselves out of applying to great schools like yours, but you know, there's so much more to share, so many other areas that they can shine in. Emily, you'd said earlier, you know, candidates don't have to have everything figured out. Now, when they apply to you and say, I want to become the future chief of staff of a major Southeast Asian airline, and I've met that alum of yours who had that role. How do you look at this? Because of course, focusing on a specific role, a specific company or career path, what are you really trying to get a sense of as they share where they imagine the MBA taking them next?
Yeah, and I think this brings up a good point, is that oftentimes when people first set out on kind of the MBA discovery journey, maybe they're thinking about their first post MBA job. I think what we're trying to get to with our applicant pool through a pretty high touch process is, your MBA, the transformation you're going to go through as part of the MBA is going to serve you through your entire career. So my first question to that person would likely be, how realistic is this first job post MBA versus what type of person are you trying to become through the MBA that's ultimately going to potentially get you into that role in the long run. So I think, understanding people's short-term goals versus their kind of longer-term view of themselves, their career, the impact that they want to have is really important. And I think, you just bring up a good point around alumni and like the exploration process. Is you referred to us earlier as gatekeepers, and I like to think of us more as kind of gate openers. So a lot of times what I'll do with potential applicants before they start even their application is putting them in touch with our alumni, with our students, so that they can really use that as an opportunity to understand their career paths, how they kind of got into the positions that they're in. And I want to see that reflected in the conversations I eventually have with them as applicants. I want to see. So yeah, I hope that answers your question in maybe somewhat of a roundabout way, but I think it's something our candidate pool should be thinking about as they kind of start the discovery process.
Thank you, because every time I now use #GateOpener, I will think of you. It's true. I mean, you're admissions officers. You're not there. Your passion is not to reject people. It's to find those reasons to accept people. And perhaps one thing, Anna, we've often talked about the intensity of the shorter one-year international programs. And yet on that career path, we look at those 105 individuals as they came in, perhaps the sort of plans they shared. 1 year is plenty of time to do so much exploration and find out, their next steps.
Absolutely. I mean, now I have a new hat on as well. So I have two hats. I have the admissions hat, and then I have the careers hat. So that's actually quite helpful for us to see, the kind of people that we're admitting and how we can better help them in finding that job that they really aspire to. Completely agree with what Emily was saying. It's more about the long-term journey and not so much about that first job. That it seems like the majority of MBAs get really obsessed with. Understandably, I'm not saying that it's not understandable, but I think we should focus more on that long-term path. And I think 1 year, the big difference between 1 year programs and 2 year programs is that in 1 year programs you don't have that much time to think and explore what you want to do. However, the career stream that we have at IMD allows you for a few months to have that exploration and to really understand, okay, so what are the kind of skills that I have that are transferable that I can use in other industries, in other functions, in other jobs. And also it allows us to have conversations with our MBAs about what's realistic, what makes sense for that long-term kind of path or long-term career goals that they have. Because many of them come with these ideas that, after the MBA, I'm going to, move into this super high-end job in a different industry, a completely different location. And sometimes, even though that's your end goal, it's how you get there. Maybe you change first your location, or maybe you change first your function. So you don't have to change everything all at the same time. So it's kind of trying to change their mindset in their career journey and how they are looking and how they are seeing it and how they are looking at it.
Right. So I wave my magic wand, and we're all 27 or 28 years old. Now that's a bigger gift to me than any of you. But Brandon, there you are, 4 or 5 years into your career and thinking about business school. Your outreach, I'm going to phrase the question this way. What would you want to ask You know, what would you be looking for to get that sense of fit and alignment with values? You know, we talk about the 17 UN SDGs, and that might resonate with you, but what are the sort of questions that you would be looking to ask of a school?
I think a great question to ask is, what do they view as a successful graduate? As far as, you know, we're talking about what people are doing afterwards, and to see how that aligns. I think that, for example, not everyone wants to be the CEO of a company, and that's quite all right for some schools. For other schools, I might be like, well, you know, we really kind of want you to aim for that top spot. That's really where we want our students to be. And there's nothing wrong, right? It's not a right or wrong, but I think asking that question of, well, what does success mean to you? What does a successful candidate do in the classroom? You know, we can talk about the demographic things, where they're from, gender, work experience, and things like that. But a lot of what we've talked about today is really more about the individual as a person, more so than these demographic things that you put on a piece of paper. So I think that's another thing to ask. But I do think having an understanding of what the school views as success, and then following up that question with, well, then how do you as a school help your students and your graduates to attain that success? I think is another great question. And then to take that information and then to move on to a few alums that you have identified via LinkedIn or wherever, and test that hypothesis, right? Say, hey, listen, you know, this is what I'm hearing from the school. Does this reflect what your journey was like? And there's always going to be a distortion between the two, right? I mean, there's never going to be an exact alignment because, again, we're talking people and everything else. But you can sort of get an understanding of, you know, not only what the school is looking for, but who you might be surrounded with. Because if a school says to you, this is what we deem to be successful afterwards, and you look at that and you're like, man, I don't know if that's really what I would deem to be successful, you can pretty much be guaranteed that there will be at least some people in that room who that is what they're striving for. And you need to determine how that aligns with what you're looking for, because I can't stress it enough. As important as it is, the school is the setting and we're the convener. Right. So we bring the lights. It's like a stage production, but the actors on stage are the one who really create the experience and the feeling and the things that you will remember long after you've graduated. So having an understanding of who else the school is looking at and who they want will really give you kind of a peek inside or peek behind the curtain at who they're looking to have in and what the class experience will be like. So I would ask, what is success, what they're looking for students, and then gut check that with some alums, and then step back and again reflect on how that aligns with your personal values and go from there.
This is great. I've got gate openers now. I've got entire Hollywood production teams that are setting the stage for students and this journey. Brandon brings up alums, Tatiana, and maybe we could organize something in one of those wonderful wine bars in Montreal, and I sit down with alums of the Des Hotels MBA program. What do you think they would say? You know, Brandon talks about measures of success or what they gained from the program. What is the sort of feedback, or what do they often share?
Well, first of all, you're invited anytime to come to Montreal and have that experience with our alums. I'm sure they would love to sit down with you. I think that the vast majority of our alums would tell you that it was really the close-knit cohort that drew them to the school, and that's where they have the most memories of those experiences, as well as just working together collaboratively, learning from one another, not only from the professors, of course, but from one another in the class is so important. Their experiential learning opportunities that are so varied as well really do contribute to the program and how they tailor it to meet their own needs. A lot of our alum who I've spoken to, a lot of our alumni will tell you that the career services group will help propel them to that next level, but they really work collaboratively with them. And similar to what other panelists have said, you know, it's so important to be open through the MBA journey and not just have that one sort of tunnel vision focus of that one goal that they think they want to achieve down the line, because as things are demonstrated to you or offered to you and opportunities are given to you throughout the MBA, sometimes those paths change rather drastically. If you ask an alum from 10 years ago what they had in mind when they started their MBA and maybe where they are now, it may have taken 15 twists and turns between their graduation date and now. Jobs that they may have now maybe didn't even exist when they were doing their MBA. So it's so important to fill your toolbox with all the things that are being offered to you, because you never know when you're going to need that one piece down the line, not only through tools and learning, but also with your network of people, and draw from their experiences, learn from one another, and just be open to having those experiences and to change. It's hard because everybody likes stability, and especially in the world we're in right now, there is so much change that happens on a regular basis. It's so nice to think, though, that every little piece will contribute to the end goal eventually, whatever that goal may be and whatever it looks like.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, we always like to think that Centre Court is part of the discovery process, and it's, you know, a step finding out more about your programs. Emily, you know, 2 years of a pandemic, but now you're sort of getting back on the road again. How can our viewers, not just that are with us today, but I mean, people are watching this in the weeks and months that follow, huge numbers of people, how can they get in touch with you? You know, what do you recommend to really find out more about the program?
Yes, I encourage people to get in touch with us. I think, you know, I mentioned high touch. I can't emphasize that enough. We have many sort of stakeholders across the ASB community that are very receptive to having conversations. I think, you know, an obvious go-to is to reach out to the admissions team, explore our website. I think we try to make all those touch points pretty obvious. We've got, you know, the opportunity to engage with our students directly through the website, but sending an email to the admissions team. There's a landing page where you can schedule a call with us. We've got a number of events listed where you can engage with us. LinkedIn is a great go-to platform, and I don't shy away from encouraging people to use it. So send me a direct request. Let's link up that way. It's also an easy way to explore our alumni's profiles and kind of understand what they're doing. They're super receptive to prospective candidates reaching out and asking to schedule a call and a chat. So I think there's no shortage of resources, and, you know, whatever channel works best for you, I think there'll be a way to get in touch with us. So yeah, I would just encourage people to do whatever they're comfortable with. Emails, websites, LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you.
Viewers, you can see these are great individuals, and that high touch, I mean, that applies to all 4 schools. Anna, it's not, you know, I have to have everything worked out. That this can just be an initial sort of conversation and sort of, you know, finding out if this is the right next step for you, right?
Absolutely. I think having a conversation with us to help you understand what an MBA is, first of all, because not everybody knows what an MBA is, and if an MBA can help them in any way, understanding that, first of all, is important. So having that first conversation with us, I think, is great. As Emily, you know, we are contactable in many different ways. So, you know, you just go to our website, and I'll put my email address later in the chat so everybody can have it. But yes, reaching out, talking to us. We also try to put everyone in contact with alumni. Alumni in the end are the ones who have gone through the process. So they will tell you how the experience was for them. Considering that their experience was their experience and it's going to be different than your experience, that's also something to keep in mind. And in a month's time, more or less, we're going to have in our website the new class profile, where everybody can see the 105 MBAs profiles and email addresses. So again, if you want to get in touch with any of our MBAs, you can just shoot them an email, and they tend to be responsive, not necessarily on the same day, but they tend to respond quite quickly. So I think, you know, trying to use as many ways to gather information and to understand, you know, is this the right place for me? Is this the right program for me? And we're always welcome to have that conversation.
2 years where we've all faced, you know, around the world, so many travel restrictions, just of course the impact sort of on society. So if we see 2022, Brandon, as, you know, this is carpe diem, this is seize the day. Just one piece of information: with your intake for January 2023, candidates have another sort of 4, 5, 6 month window to be able to find out more about the program and then meet deadlines for the January class start.
Yeah, we have 5 rounds actually. So we have our last one for internet. Well, you can apply in November, but it's you have to move really quick because we have to work on visas and things like that. So typically we see the October round being the one where most people, or where we, this kind of the last international round, if you will. I would say that our April and June rounds tend to be the busiest actually. So we recruit, even though we start in January, we recruit 24/7 or 365. In other words, we don't sort of stop at the end of the year. We kind of go throughout. And what we find is that for most candidates, only around 25% of the people we're speaking to in that cycle are actually looking to begin with the next intake. So oftentimes, and I see people shaking their heads from like, so oftentimes, because it's a long decision-making process, right? It's a huge decision to, decide to quit your job and pick up and move yourself, depending on where you're living, halfway around the world, what have you, and then subject yourself to the rigors of an MBA. So oftentimes it can take a little while to take that decision. So for us in the January start, I mean, we literally just began the program a month ago. So we're very early days. We did have our first round close last Tuesday, but that tends to be for those people who we've spoken to from the middle of last year on, or who really are ready and they want to go ahead and tie everything down so they can start planning. I think that is a key thing. If you want to do a program and you've explored the finances and you can make everything work, once you've identified your schools, it does make sense to apply sooner rather than later. Not necessarily for scholarship reasons or entry reasons, which are absolutely valid, but more to give yourself time to prepare and plan, because there's nothing worse than the anxiety of having to walk into your job and say, I'm leaving, and then trying to plan, some schools might have accommodations on campus, some schools don't, where am I going to stay, and all of these other things. And then you're going to start this really intense program, which most of our programs, there's not like a really easy, we don't sort of ease you into it. It's kind of like the program starts, you're at 125, kilometers an hour, go. So the earlier you can take care of all that stuff, it just makes your transition that much smoother, which gives you a better frame of mind to start with, which I think is really critical. Especially if you haven't been in school. For our students, the average age is around 30. So it's been 7, 8, 10 plus years since someone was in an academic setting, which you have to retrain your brain. It's like running. If you haven't gone, you're not going to go run a marathon tomorrow if you haven't, been able to do that recently. So there is still time, but I would definitely say, for the sake of the viewers, do it as early as possible. Then you can really, one, have the time, and then enjoy the time with your friends and family and focus on that so that you can start with a good frame of mind.
Yeah. So a cultural reference, 125 kilometers now, that's on a Dutch bicycle, and that's really quick.
You have to realize for an American, though, it's tough because I always have to switch between miles and kilometers. It almost came out miles, so I'm working double duty here.
And a final word, Tatiana, from you, because Brandon, you've all said, take this time, find the right school. It's a big decision. If you had to boil everything down, the career outcomes, there's the ROI, all of these wonderful decisions, the networks, one reason to consider this next step, doing it for yourself, what would that be for you?
Well, it is. It's growth, right? So it's an investment in oneself. So as we've said throughout this panel and throughout this conversation, it's not necessarily the immediate ROI. It's not that first career or that first job that you'll get post-graduation. Perhaps it's one that you'll find 10 years down the road that you feel this is really where you were meant to be. So like I said before, all those little tools that are going into your toolbox, the investment that you are putting in yourself is going to be worth it in the end. But as Brandon said, it does take a lot of planning. Some people plan it for years and years, and others take that leap right away because maybe they're a little bit more able to, a little bit more free, or perhaps they're more of a free spirit and they're able to plan a little bit faster than others. But do take that time and think about what that investment looks like for you. It's not going to be the same from one person to the next. It's really important to know what you're hoping to get out of it, to explain that through your application and have the opportunity to speak to different people and find out maybe what their investment looked like, what their starting point looked at, where they are, what Emily and Anna said, going on LinkedIn and speaking to ambassadors and current students, all really important pieces. And all of those pieces and all those components will wind up as little tools in that toolbox. So somewhere along the way, that investment will convert into a return for you, but it doesn't necessarily happen immediately. I think it's really important to understand that you have to have a growth mindset when you're looking at an MBA, and learn from each experience and from each individual who is part of that journey with you.
I think a final word that focuses on growth, personal, professional growth. So my gate openers, all four of you, Emily, Anna, Brandon, Tatiana, thank you for getting us off for such a wonderful and inspiring start as our viewers think about their personal journey, their personal growth. Anna has shared contact details, and of course the schools will be in touch with you. So thanks to all four. It was lovely to have you with us at Centre Court.